Hey everybody, I'm Charting Man Dan with the Chart Guys. We're going to check in on Bitcoin's attempt at being a daily bull flag. We're going to check in on MSTR, continued relative strength as we have earnings this Thursday. And we're going to look at a couple altcoins which may be shaping up some rising wedges that we have to be cautious on. And of course, a broader market check-in. Thanks for the likes and the shares as always. Bitcoin. So Bitcoin's daily chart, right now this is sideways consolidation. Bulls will take sideways consolidation any day of the week when it's coming after a bull move up. The last thing you want to do is significantly retrace and give back half of the move or more. But considering we went up 10, 12% to trade sideways while the EMAs catch up and while the new price action, or I should say the new range is digested, that's a good sign. So the simple statement is, if 92.8 thousand is support, the bulls are in complete control. If we lose that level, we'll zoom out, we'll look at the possibility of weekly consolidation, but again, there are no red flags. We just got to remind ourselves at some point, whether it's the end of April, to start May, the end of May, whenever it is, we know we have to confirm a weekly uptrend at some point. That has to happen. Remember the last monthly consolidation, things were boring, it was slow. We got that confirmed weekly uptrend before the convincing move got going. So could we go straight up and hit a new all-time high from here? Yeah, that's possible. I don't think it's the most likely scenario. There's a lot of resistance, as we know, this previous support zone that we are battling and trying to get over. But even up here, we know low 100,000s, a lot of resistance there as well. So again, the way that I approach this as a trader is I already have some positions. If I'm going to add to these swing positions, I've got to be waiting for a weekly higher low if I want the best risk reward. So if we top out in the upper 90s, we look for the weekly higher low, we watch the retracement size of that consolidation, and if we confirm the weekly uptrend, we know the probabilities of it being a monthly bull flag heading to new all-time highs will increase significantly. But we need that weekly uptrend to confirm. So that's personally what I'm waiting for if I'm going to increase any size in things like Bitcoin or MSTR or whatever I'm looking at. From the last video, we were looking at the S&P 500 futures on the 12-hour time frame. And we were talking about this tightening range and how it was going to be key for short-term direction. It broke bull. We got some confidence last Thursday. It's been a grind right now where, we're cautious. Is this a 4-hour rising wedge on the S&P 500? The NASDAQ just went straight up 10% plus since the last daily consolidation. Essentially, the next couple of days, the question is, are we about to pull back and look for a daily higher low? And yesterday and today, I don't have any short-term conviction in the broader market. So I'm doing a lot of sitting on my hands because we're just chopping around here. You can see the hourly chart. Big drop yesterday, big bounce, bullish this morning. Now a pullback, just a bit cautious in the short term. When we do consolidate next, we will keep an eye out for a daily higher low. But again, that's going to matter in the short term for Bitcoin, whether or not we keep this breakout going or we consolidate on the daily. MSTR relative strength continues. Look at this stair step. We've got 8 days in a row with a higher low every single day, and it's almost a higher low every single day from this fear bottom, aside from one tiny little candle there. That's almost a straight up move of 62%. So again, if we look at MSTR divided by Bitcoin, we've been seeing this relative strength for weeks. I talked about in the last live stream how this relative strength told me focus on crypto right now. And here we have this relationship hitting 4.5-month highs, where MSTR is the strongest it's been compared to Bitcoin in 4.5 months. And so with earnings on Thursday, some people speculating that the accounting style is going to change, so it's going to show, better results and things like that. It was funny, someone earlier asked me, I just posted this on Twitter, but a Chart Guys member asked me, why is there this much relative strength in MSTR? We're seeing continuation on the daily, Bitcoin is sideways, and I gave, all these answers we've been showing relative strength for weeks, and here's the posts where I was pointing it out. And then I realized I'm not really answering his question. Why is it showing relative strength? I have no idea, and I don't need to know. I have made money because MSTR has been showing us relative strength, and the why is the least important aspect of the equation for me as a trader. And, you know, again, people pointing out earnings and things like that, that may absolutely be the reason. But again, just want to highlight how my brain works as a trader. That doesn't, the why is the least important thing. And when someone is learning to trade, especially if you're coming from a fundamental background, it's the hardest thing to grasp is that why doesn't really matter anymore when you're using technical analysis and charts. It can help, you know, the why can be a little fundamental piece of the puzzle that helps you know where to look and things like that. But just for me personally, it is at the bottom of importance. So what now? MSTR, we're looking up at this resistance zone, 390s to 400 psychological. If it's a bearish reaction to earnings, we're going to look for a daily higher low. There's tons of space for it. We could drop 10% on earnings and just be looking for a daily higher low. We have set the monthly higher low right off EMA 12. This is why it was a top watch. The big question from here will remain, do we set a monthly lower high and tighten up through the summer, or can bulls do something more? And that's the question for Bitcoin as well. There's less space percentage-wise. There's less space to work with. But I'm not going to rule out the possibility, again, just looking at how much we chopped around during the last monthly consolidation, it is possible that, you know, we fail 100,000 again and then pull back to the mid 80s. And next thing you know, it's June, July. We'll see. But just have to be open for that as a possibility. I am looking for things to slow down a little bit into the summer, just because normally, you know, things slow down into the summer as people are taking vacations and being outside more, myself included. But also the fact that we're coming from such a volatile early spring, you know, maybe it just means more digesting all that volatility through the summer as well. I'm speaking more of the broader market, the tariffs and all that. But just something to have in your game plan, the possibility, especially with altcoins. So many altcoins can just trade sideways for a while. We'll look at those in just a moment. But MSTR definitely on that list. Again, same thing. You know, we can go 20% higher from here and just form a monthly lower high and tighten up for a while. Still holding my MSTY swing. No reason to exit anything at this point. Could be walking up a stop for a partial position with every little daily high or low on the way up. Other crypto stock, I'm still in a GME swing position. Tried to break resistance today. Not doing so just yet. I'll exit some if 2684 breaks. And again, same thing. Are we about to set a weekly lower high and tighten up here for a while? It's absolutely possible. So that's why if we break that short-term support, I will trim some position for that possibility. Dominance chart, still all bulls. Weekly stair step, nothing changing. Altcoin bulls really want that to break, but it's not breaking. I'm still watching ETHBTC, and look at this sideways range. This tells me ETH is going to see volatility within the next couple of days, a volatility spike comparative to Bitcoin. Is it going to be on a drop or on a breakout? That's the harder part to try and pinpoint. But this chart being sideways for an entire week now, again, you look back and say, when's the last time this chart was this sideways for a week plus? And you can look back at something comparable here. And that was end of March, where that then broke. What was Ethereum doing? End of March. Dropping, I assume. So it was a leg down. But keep an eye out for Ethereum volatility. I'm watching this 12-hour channel. This overall is still a weak bounce. All things considered, especially when looking at the weekly time frame. So if that ETHBTC range is going to break bull, that means ETH is heading up to 2,000. If that ETHBTC range breaks bear, it means we're likely heading down to 1600s. So again, within the next couple of days, that's likely going to break. As far as the weekly chart for ETH, and again, this is the case for many alts, where we have altcoins that we can differentiate, where a bunch of altcoins are breaking their weekly lower highs, and breaking their downtrends. And like Bitcoin, we'll still have to eventually confirm a weekly uptrend. And then there's a group like ETH, which are still in a clear weekly downtrend. And we have a little dinky bounce pivot at 2105. And so again, we can go 10% higher from here and still form a weekly lower high. So it is still a clear weekly downtrend at this point. Still watching BNB. Are we about to see weekly consolidation for Binance to keep tightening up within this equilibrium? Definitely watching for it. Again, I want BNB to get as tight as possible. Set a weekly lower high, pull back for a week or two, set a higher low. End of May, we'll look for a break. We'll see if that shapes up in an ideal way. The tighter, the better. XRP, is this a rising wedge? We had a little headline over the weekend about ETF approval. That led to a little bit of short-term relative strength. But again, bull breaks without follow-through. We just got to be cautious. Knowing on the weekly, again, we zoom out. What's the most likely scenario? Well, anything under 259 is a weekly lower high. So I'm keeping an eye out for the possibility of a weekly lower high. I then zoom in and say, if we're going to set a weekly lower high, it will be via a daily rising wedge. And so I keep an eye on this. Could this break bull? Yes, but I'm definitely paying attention because of the longer term time frame trend. If this does break bear, I then watch for a weekly inverse head and shoulders to try and shape up. Again, same thing, knowing that if this monthly high or low on XRP is going to follow through, we must confirm a weekly trend change to the bulls eventually. And then same thing. Summer, do we just tighten up? If we confirm a weekly inverse head and shoulders and get another leg up, 250 plus, is it possible we then set a monthly lower high and then pull back a bit? Absolutely. But one time frame at a time. First, it's a possible daily rising wedge. If that confirms, we'll go back to the weekly time frame and watch for an eventual weekly high or low from there. CRV, another name we've been watching due to its relative strength. Again, same thing. We've got to be cautious of a potential rising wedge. This is a bit different in the sense that we have broken the weekly lower highs. So it's one of the stronger altcoins for doing that. But still got to pay attention. I would adjust this resistance line a bit to include this candle. Either way, if bulls continue to struggle up at 71 cents, or we break 71 with zero follow through, daily rising wedge on watch. And again, we could just go down the list of these altcoins and see a bunch of names where we're watching for weekly lower high or watching for weekly consolidation. Sol broke the weekly lower highs. All right, good start. Sol now has space for a higher low attempt next weekly consolidation. Is that about to shape up? Maybe. Not just yet. Bull's still hanging on. Obviously, a lot's going to depend on Bitcoin. Is Bitcoin a daily bull flag to fend off weekly consolidation in alts? Or do we break that short-term Bitcoin support? The S&P 500 finally sees some daily consolidation with the NASDAQ, and altcoins start weekly consolidation. In terms of conviction, again, that's like a 50-50 for me. So we have to be on our toes a bit in terms of getting new information every single day for the rest of this week to help us determine which of those two scenarios is more likely. So if I don't have conviction, that means I'm not entering new trades. If I've got a long swing portfolio with a handful of names and I'm recognizing some rising wedges, maybe I try some hedge positions and try some top fishing. Try and play off a recent high to see if we're going to pull back, because I don't want to get rid of my swings. I've got good entries. I think that we might get monthly bounce followed through, but if we're going to have to sit through weekly consolidation, maybe I want to try and protect a little bit. Again, the way that I'm approaching it is I've got some swing longs. I'd like some more, but I have to wait for a weekly higher low to be shaping up if I'm going to add and like the risk reward of an add. See if there's anything else I want to look at here, and then I'll get to the chat. So again, link, key weekly resistance, $16. If we fail, Maybe it's an inverse head and shoulders on the weekly, trying to get a monthly bounce with some follow through. A lot of names with that setup. All right. One of the last videos talked about a dividend plan with MSTY. Can you explain your mindset on that and time frame? Do your own research on MSTY. There are additional risks associated with it. My game plan was I'm building some dividend plays in an account. I have high conviction MSTR is about to set a monthly high or low. So I'm going to add MSTY into that dividend account. And at this point, I'll be looking to take some profit pre-MSTR earnings, take a little bit more off, get my break even down around, the teens. I'll get my break even down around here. I entered here. Give myself a bunch of cushion and then just set a break even stop. And if Bitcoin has all-time highs and MSTR goes back, 450 plus, then great, I'll keep benefiting. And if not, and things roll over and we get fresh broader market lows on another wave of tariff whatever, I don't lose $1. That's my approach to swing trading in markets. If I'm trying to just let something play out on a longer term time frame, like a monthly chart. Big time USDC. What a name. Again, rising wedge, right? We got to watch for that. That's a rising wedge that we need to be cautious of. Simple statement, if 7.5 holds, bulls have nothing to worry about. If 7.5 breaks, we confirm a daily downtrend, we confirm the rising wedge, we zoom out and look for weekly consolidation. I always adjust for dividends when I'm doing technical analysis. To me, that's an artificial change in price, not dictated by supply and demand. NASDAQ's chopping around sideways, just like the S&P 500. I don't have conviction in the short term here. There's a clear wall of resistance. The bulls are setting a higher low every single day. I'm watching for daily consolidation, but bulls are doing a good job of holding on. What's up, Coolism? Coolism? Not talking about cannabis in a crypto stream. Just for support on the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ, it's the low of every single day. Keep things simple. If we've set a higher low every day on SPY and QQQ for the last 6 days, that's our guide. Nothing changes if we set a higher low every day. When that pattern breaks, tells us something is changing. The bulls have full control as long as that pattern is intact. MSTY is going to hurt a lot of people this cycle, not if you use a stop loss. Not looking at PLTR. If you guys want stock analysis, I do it all day in the chat room. Shorted Tesla this morning. Just a heads up, we're going to do a free trial for the Chart Guys membership, access to the live streams in the chat room starting Thursday. So keep an eye out for that. Post about it on Twitter. Talk about it next live stream. 2-week free trial to check things out. And I'll talk about every stock your heart desires. All right. Appreciate you checking in. Thanks again for the likes and the shares. One more summary here. Bitcoin, bulls in full control as long as 92.8 holds. Next resistance level after the 96 recent high, we're looking up at this zone. It's more of a zone than an individual level. I'd be looking at, again, it's pretty much the 100,000 level, but mid 98 to 100,000. Support, resistance, approaching. Peace.